Welcome to Everybody Eats, Building Generational Wealth in the Black Community. Hope that you got able to get in the vibe a little bit and got inspired, etc. So who am I? I am Alicia Williams. I am one of the co-chairs of the Professional Development Committee here for the New York Urban League Young Professionals. I'll let my co-chair introduce herself, and then I will go ahead and introduce our lovely moderator who will take it over for us.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am Lakimja, Brooklyn native, professional development coach. Happy to have you all with us tonight. I don't want to take up any more space. There's a really dope panel that's going to take place tonight, and I'm going to turn it back over to Alicia.
Yes, thank you, Lakimja. So jumping right in, because again, we have a great conversation for you, and we encourage you to use the chat box. It's there. We know we're virtual, but we're still here to have a good time. So whatever that is, whatever questions you have, whatever conversations you want to start, go ahead and throw that in the chat box. But first, we're going to introduce our lovely moderator, Miss Devaline Theby Felix. She is a diversity and inclusion manager with a background in digital marketing and project management. She is a founder of Debbie Felix Coaching and Consulting, a life coach and spiritual counseling company. Also, Debbie is a member of the Professional Development Committee, yay, and the New York Urban League Young Professionals. She came to us from DC's Thursday Network, their Young Professional Network. So we're excited to now have her and utilize her for the wonderful events that we are having. Debbie has produced events focused on career development of professionals of color for the National Urban League and has worked with many national leaders, as well as people who have been a part of some wonderful sustainable diversity speaking series of the world. And we are happy to have her. She has lastly managed successful campaigns at the Daily Press, ABC News, Word, Wildlife Fund, as well as Smile. So I am going to turn it over so that our lovely moderator, Debbie, can introduce our panelists and we can just jump right in.
Thank you so much, Alicia. You make me sound so amazing and I appreciate it. So yeah, let's definitely hop right in. I want to introduce our amazing panelists. I want to start first with Ashley Rouse, who is the founder of Trade Street Jam Co., a minority and woman certified small batch jam company based right here in Brooklyn. Their fruit forward and clean tasting vegan jams are low in sugar and high in flavor. Their jams are best used in craft cocktails, barbecue sauces, glazes for meats or vegetables, baked goods, yogurt, overnight oats, salad dressings, and more. So all of the good eats. The company teaches jam classes to kids at underprivileged schools and aspires to use residual jams to feed the less fortunate, two efforts that are near and dear to the owner's heart. So please welcome Ashley Rouse. The next panelist I would like to introduce is Stanley Lumax, who is the founder of African Chop House, which celebrates African culture through good food, music, and people. Growing up in a Ghanaian household, shout out to Ghana, he was consistently surrounded by a lively community of parents, aunts, and uncles, and extended family. He has a professional background in marketing, where he has worked with brands such as Nike Basketball, National Basketball Association, Converse, Beats by Dre, amongst others. He's taken this experience and applied it to his desire to bring the African diaspora together. Stanley is a founding partner in Teranga, a New York-based West African restaurant led by celebrated Senegalese chef Pierre Thiem. So please welcome both of our panelists, and we will get right in. So the first thing I want to do, let's start with Ashley. Please tell us more about your origin story. Who are you and how you built this business in your life? How's your upbringing even contributed to the business that you built?
Oh my God, you just asked so many questions, like all in one. Hey guys, I'm Ashley. I'm the founder of Trade Street. I've been a chef for about 15 years. So I've always just kind of like, played around with preserving things. I love jams. I love condiments. And so I just used to make jams in this tiny apartment on Trade Street in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I just had an idea, like back in 2008, I was like, I should start this jam company, call it Trade Street Jam Company. And a friend of mine was like, write it down. You'll never remember that, write it down. And so I wrote it down, and then literally moved to Brooklyn maybe 6 years ago now, and just got super inspired by like the art, the food, the culture, but also like the maker culture, right? There's like a lot of people here that are building businesses, like hand making things, crafting things. And so I just got super inspired by that. And then as far as my upbringing, there's no like chefs in my family, but I grew up with my grandfather always cooking, and my family kind of gathering around food. So as well as probably a lot of Black people, and then also just people in general, right? We like gather around food. And so I feel like I grew up, you know, in that kind of space, and food always brought us together. So that's probably where my food background came from.
Okay, so where did you relocate from? You said you moved to Brooklyn 6 years ago?
Yeah, so I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina before I came to Brooklyn. I went to culinary school there, Johnson and Wales.
Okay, awesome. Let's talk to our other chef, Stanley. How about you? What's your origin story?
How you guys doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
First of all, I definitely don't want to be on here perpetrating. I am not a chef by any means. You know, I have been blessed with the gift of being able to bring people together. So in that quest, I've, you know, found some amazing partners who are chefs. My origin story is born Plainfield, New Jersey. Both my parents are from Ghana, West Africa. And one of the things I saw growing up, my mother was the oldest of her siblings, and my dad was the oldest of his. And once they established their lives and, you know, bought a home, our home was always full. I always had uncles and aunts and extended family that were moving from Ghana to the US, and literally starting with nothing. Our house was the first stop, right? Like our house was literally Ellis Island. You know what I mean? They came here, you know, they got odd jobs. They enrolled in, you know, junior college, and then they enrolled in, you know, 4-year universities, you know, graduated, got jobs, bought their own homes, and started their own families. But within that time, I mean, literally from, I would say from ages 8 to let's say 12, there was always, you know, a community in my house, cooking, talking, and things of that nature. And it was just something that, you know, as I grew older and I became, you know, a homeowner and a parent, and, you know, started thinking about my legacy, was something I reflected very fondly on. And I wanted to find ways to not only create my own version of that, but also just really bring people together. And initially, funny enough how life works, when Donald Trump was elected in, you know, 2016, right after that, you know, one of the first things that made an impact on me was the fact that he started, you know, deporting people. And a lot of Africans were being deported as well. And I saw how it was impacting my friends and my community. And, you know, one day I was really inspired to just have people over. So, you know, I literally, you know, on a spur of a moment inspiration, planned a brunch where I went to all the different African restaurants in Brooklyn that I knew about, and had them cater a tray, like a tin tray, aluminum tray, as they do. And I invited a network of my friends over. We threw on an Afro Beats playlist, and it just felt right. You know what I mean? It just felt like home. It just felt like something that I needed to do more of. So again, having a background in marketing, I wasn't, you know, content just doing it in my home with, you know, aluminum trays. I started thinking about ways to extend it and really start growing it. And every 3 months, I ended up doing it, not necessarily by plan, but more by inspiration. And I think honestly, the big moment came about when, again, my background being in marketing, I was always attending NBA All-Star, and I was inspired to follow NBA All-Star to LA and do a chop house, and hadn't done one there, had no real plan, just really just figured if I can bring 50 people in my house, I can rent an Airbnb in LA and do the same thing. And as I started, working to make it happen, honestly, the heavens and God put the right people in my path. And before I knew it, I locked down an amazing home to do it. I found all the right caterers and restaurant owners and things of that nature to create the menu. And we had an amazing time. Like, we literally threw the event the same day as the Jordan party. And anybody that's been to All-Star knows that that's suicide, because everyone wants to go to the Jordan party. But we still managed to have 300 people there that didn't want to leave. Everyone had a great time. And while doing that, one of the chefs that I utilized was Pierre Cham, who is now my partner in Teranga. So, that's sort of how things started for me.
So both of you described having, these sparks of inspiration by the time, using the time that you spent with your family and the time that you spent with your friends. But how did you actually form the business? What went into forming the business and now keeping it afloat for as long as you have? Let's start with Ashley.
Wow, forming it and then keeping it afloat, two huge things. Forming it is the easy part. I literally just was making jam at home in my apartment. I started selling it on Etsy. I started selling at these local craft fairs. I remember going to these events and thinking oh, one day I wish I could do that. I'm not sure what it will take, but I wish I could get there. And, that's all we've done for the past 3 years of these events, every week, every weekend. But yeah, I just started selling it. I never from the beginning said oh, this is just going to be this huge business. It was more so just a hobby for me. I'm not a Netflix binger. So when I get off work, I can't just sit on the couch and chill for the rest of the evening. So I just needed something to kind of keep me going after work. And so started selling on Etsy, and just thought let's see if I can get some extra money. I think from there, it just kind of, formed into what it is now. I mean, it started selling on Etsy. My husband was like, I want you to get your own website. I'm like, why? Etsy's easy. I don't have to do anything. And he's in marketing as well. So he's like, I don't want you marketing another platform. I want you to be promoting your brand. So got a website, refined my packaging, and just kept, there's so much in that small amount. There's so much in that question, right? Literally, I built my own website. I did not have a web developer. So it's just been years of learning and making it better. I didn't have anyone to design my packaging because I couldn't afford it. So I just posted about this on Instagram today. I literally in PowerPoint was playing around with these different designs. Photoshop what? No, I was using PowerPoint, and then I was printing these labels off because I didn't know the size of the jar. So I was printing these different size labels and then wrapping them around the jar and taping it on to see if it looked good. That's how the packaging came about. And then, kept doing these events. Getting consumer feedback was a big piece of it. Doing these in-person events were so beneficial for me because you're getting this firsthand, real-time responses. People are tasting it in front of you, and they're loving it, or they're going, this is weird. And so kept doing that. And then, when you stay the course, you just start to build this momentum. Some businesses, it takes a short amount of time. Some people, it takes longer. But being in New York City and doing these events was really great because we met a lot of people who, were important or had the kind of the strings that could get us somewhere we needed to be. So through that, we met someone in Whole Foods. Now, it took us years still to get in Whole Foods, but we eventually got into Whole Foods from this connection that we met years and years ago at doing these events. We've met people from Oprah's Favorite Things and, reporters from New York Times. All the press we've gotten are from people that we met years ago when we were selling in these little stupid jars. And, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had a good product. So I think just over time, it's just kind of built up from consistency and kind of just continuing to push the product.
Consistency being the key phrase.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
one of the biggest challenges of running a business is feeling the energy to be consistent, because it's not like a 9 to 5 where you're like, hey, I'm going to take a vacation for a week. You got to pour your time and energy every single day into what you love. How about you, Stanley? So you had the events that you put together, but what made you think, okay, now like I'm going to turn this into a full-time business, and how do you keep it afloat?
I think in my situation, it's interesting. I think what I realized again, I still have a day job, and I had a day job back then in marketing, and honestly, I got tired of feeding all of y'all for free. You know what I mean? So like my first thought was, okay, I want to create a model where partnering with brands makes sense. And obviously for it to make sense for brands, you have to create a brand yourself that has value and has a connection to some level of community or consumer. So when I decided to do the event in LA, I immediately start thinking about, how do I make this a brand? I need a logo, I need a website, I need a mission statement, I need a vision, I need a proposition, I need to figure out all these things that diversify what I do and separate me from whoever else may be in that space. And luckily for me, as things happened, the event that I did in LA was the same day as the launch of Black Panther. So when you talk about like sort of the energy and sort of timing being right in terms of people's interest in African culture and all things African and blah, 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 it couldn't have been a better time to do it. And again, that helped me sort of, I partnered with a liquor brand, and I think a couple of the events they did that weekend outside of mine didn't pan out. So mine ended up being like the shining star of their weekend. And that gave me a lot of credibility to do future events with them. And then from there, I just continued to grow. At that point, I had content, I had video, I had photography that showed all these amazing quote unquote influencers and awesome people having a great time and talking and sharing their images on social media. So it made it easier for future brands to buy into what I was doing, because they had a sense of where they could fit in and the fact that it actually was making an impact. So to transition off of the success of African Chop House, myself and a group of 5 partners decided to open an African restaurant. So that was something I had never done before, and honestly didn't necessarily have the desire to do in terms of just the business aspect of it. But it was such a great opportunity that I felt like, I'd kick myself if I didn't get involved. So, we found a location in Harlem, and we literally just mom and popped it, until we're where we are today in terms of doing everything, right? Like, literally, developing the design and, visual aesthetics, the menu, doing tastings with, our community. And one thing I'll say that was really helpful because of African Chop House was I had built a community. After I did the event in LA, I followed it up by doing one in Johannesburg, South Africa. I did one in Ghana for the year of return. I did one in Chicago right before COVID. So I built up a community of people on a global level, and all of these people, and I utilized social media, specifically Instagram, to speak and kind of promote the event. So what would happen is a lot of people would reach out to me and say, I'm coming to New York, where is African Chop House? And, at that point, like I hadn't opened a restaurant yet. So I had all these people that were really hungry for what I was offering. And when I opened Teranga, or when we opened Teranga, it was an easy, way to send the community to a brick and mortar restaurant to get the same food that they would want and desire from African Chop House. And I think for me, that experience has sort of led me into prioritizing community over, brick and mortar. Because I think once you have the community, which is a very hard piece to create, you know, they'll go with you anywhere. Today I could be all about food. Tomorrow I could be, you know, I could start a clothing line, you know what I mean? But there's a certain level of trust where that community would follow me into whatever the product I decide to create is.
100% agree. Customers definitely don't just buy into a product, they buy into who you are as a business owner, the atmosphere you provide, the culture you have on your platforms, and when you're meeting people in person. And both of you talked about investing so much time and energy into your businesses. And as humans, we can be naturally impatient. So I'm just really curious about how long did it take you to get to the state of success that you're at now? Ashley.
Well, first of all, it's definitely a long game. And I think I wish somebody would have told me that in the beginning. Like, I thought I should be rich by now, but I'm not. And I mean, like, you just have to find other reasons, obviously, from jump. Like, if you're starting a business for any other reason than like you just love your product and you love to be in business for yourself, then like it's probably not the right reasons. But you know, how long did it take to get to success? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Like,
one of our people just asked, how do you define success? What will success look like for you in terms of your business?
For me, when I can pay all of the bills with my business, that's success for me. But I think there's so many different like levels to it. You know, full transparency, currently my husband pays about 70% of our bills, 70%. And then the business pays the remaining 30%. And that's just such a big deal to me, because when we started off, you know, he paid 100% of everything when I quit my job. And I remember before I quit, like, a lot of people always are asking me, like, how did you quit your job? Like, you know, what went into it? And we literally put down the numbers, and after we, you know, calculated out how much we needed per month and how much I needed. Yes, someone said shout out to amazing supportive spouses. Like, seriously, because if I was like a single person, like living by myself or whatever, and had to do, I don't think I would be where I am. But we put down all the numbers, like, okay, here's, you know, we need $5,000 a month to live. So how many months can we go off of with your savings and mine and your income before I can't do this anymore and I got to go back to work? And that's literally, I feel like, the basic calculation of like how to figure out if you can quit your job. But when we started, we figured out that like we could go probably about a year without me contributing anything to the bills. And so I was like, cool, a year. Like, if I can't do it in a year, then it's not for me. And it was the craziest year ever. I didn't even stop to think like, oh, I'm doing it. Literally, it was just like, okay, maybe I should start trying to pay this much towards the bills. And then I was paying this amount every week towards the bills. And then it was like, oh, well, we've been doing kind of well. Like, maybe I should increase that a little bit. And so now I pay 30%. Like, I started off like 4 years ago paying nothing. So, I mean, you know, there's different levels to it, but like, I could probably pay a little bit more, but my husband's got it. So, you know, like, we'll figure it out. But like, that's like what success looks like to me. And if we continue this trajectory we're on, where, you know, June hit and like our most businesses, literally, especially Black businesses, just went crazy. If we continue this on, which I know we will through the holidays, but like into 2021, then that 30% will likely go up to 40, 45%, you know? So I just feel like before you know it, we'll just be like, we'll be rolling in the dough.
Amen to that. Shout out to that 45% coming up. How about you, Stanley?
Honestly, I think for me, and I think, you know, like I've always sort of been Mr. Side Hustle. You know, at one point when I was in marketing, photography was my side hustle. So I've always had something on the side. So fortunately, I don't necessarily look at Teranga, the restaurant, and I know my partners will be like, well, we do. I don't necessarily look at it from the perspective of, you know, this is going to pay my bills. I look at it more as a labor of love. That doesn't mean we don't want to continue to grow and be successful, but for me, it's not something that's paying my bills. It's more the goal of, you know, creating a business that scales, and continuing to service the community in different ways. You know, we started out with a location on 110th and 5th Avenue. You know, next week we're literally opening our second location in Brooklyn. And it's one of those things, like when you think about where we were in March with this whole pandemic, you know, we were having conversations about, you know, how do we even stay open? Like, how do we, you know, continue to run a restaurant when we can't invite anyone inside? We can't risk, you know, harming our employees. How do we pay our employees when our doors are closed? You know, it got real really quickly. And, you know, all the fun of having a restaurant kind of went out the window. But again, you know, I credit a lot of that to having a strong community, and a community that believed in us and supported us. And we literally went from, you know, we spent probably the first couple months during the pandemic providing meals to first responders and hospitals, and you know, people were paying us to do that. And then it evolved into providing meals for, you know, underprivileged children, and people supported that. And then, you know, by midsummer, we were providing meals to protesters. So again, it really, you know, was the community that helped us continue to grow. And by us providing a quality product, whether it was the food, the environment, what have you, I think that helped, you know, sustain us. So I think success for us is really, you know, taking the mission that we have in terms of providing quality African food for the world and continuing to grow our footprint.
Congratulations on your second location, by the way.
Thank you.
So we talk about COVID being one of the challenges that most businesses faced this year. So I want to talk about the challenges that y'all faced in the beginning of your business. So what are the challenges you faced in the beginning of your business? And do you feel like other than COVID that you're facing any challenges right now?
Everything was a challenge in the beginning. I mean, if you don't have, you know, this business acumen, which I have common sense, but I don't feel like I have any particular like business skills. Everything's a challenge. I mean, you're starting something from scratch. I also feel like a lot of people, you know, one of the biggest challenges is that I felt like a lot of people weren't sharing information with me. And that's probably the number one challenge that I faced. I had a ton of entrepreneur friends, and I would sit down and say like, hey, I want to quit my job. Like, what did you do to be able to quit? And, you know, people were just very general with me. Like I had this one friend who I'm super close with, but he just was like, you know, sis, you gotta grind. Like you really gotta hustle. And I was like, great, but how do you pay the bills? And like, he, you know, and he was just like, I mean, like you gotta work hard and then and I was like, you know what, like, literally, like I just felt like he was feeding me bullshit, excuse me. But like I wanted somebody to just be like, hey, look, this is how, you know, I pay the bills with this amount, this percentage, you know, the rest of it comes from here. I wanted people to share more on that topic specifically, but then also, you know, shared kitchens, co-packers for like food brands, CPG brands, just different like tools. And I just felt like people weren't sharing. And so it's probably one of the number one reasons why I'm so transparent. Like I've literally posted my bank account, like on my stories. And like when I had like literally like $10 left in my business bank account, like my husband still laughs about it. Someone like wrote me and was like, sis, did you get hacked? And I was like, no, I just have no money. Like, and my husband thought that was so hilarious. But no, I just feel like, you know, people sharing information was like a big struggle. And then also, like I said, money in the beginning, money all the time, but money in the beginning, particularly when starting off with my website and my design, my branding, just all of that stuff, like content. Like if you don't know how to, you know, I took for granted I had a nice camera and I shot most of my own content, but like I took for granted. People would ask me, like, who's shooting your content? I'm like, me, duh. But like, if you don't have that, any kind of skill in that area or money to get like these DSLR cameras are like thousands of dollars. Like, you know, where are you getting the money to do that? And then if you can't do it, how are you paying for somebody to shoot? So those were challenges in the beginning. And then that capital, that money is something that's just rolled over to today. You know, we've bootstrapped it for 4 years. We haven't had any outside capital. And to get as far as we are without it is just like a godsend. It literally, God is just like reigning over this business. Like, clearly I'm walking in my purpose, because there's no way I could not be, and he would have gotten us this far without capital. But so now we're at a point where like we need investment, like we need money, we need some type of investment injected into the business. And so I think those are like huge struggles starting off.
How about you, Stanley?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. You know, money is obviously always an important thing that you can't have enough of. But I think knowledge is also important. You know, like as Ashley mentioned, I think a lot of times coming into things, you make a lot of mistakes that cost you money because you just don't know. You really don't know, you know, and you're just testing things out. So I think like, you know, knowledge, education, and finding individuals that are willing to share that information is super important. It's probably the second most valuable thing, because having money is important, but if you don't know what to do with that money, to grow that money or to put it in the right places, you'll find yourself making a lot of mistakes and, you know, costing yourself money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will just add on to that. I will say, like, he's right. The most valuable thing is like information from other people, like-minded people, other entrepreneurs. I used to hate networking, and my husband was like, what's wrong with you? Like, you need to get out and talk to people. I'm like an introvert. I'm like, I'd rather just be on the couch. And he's like, you need to go out and talk to people. And once I quit my job, I had all this like free time, right? And so I would start to like set up lunch meetings to go talk to other entrepreneurs. It was the most rewarding and fulfilling thing, like meeting with other people and just having an hour conversation, people whose businesses were bigger than mine, smaller than mine. I learned so much. And those are the things that can save you money, like Stanley talked about. Like, you'll spend money making mistakes. So the more you're talking to like-minded people, the more money you're keeping in your pocket.
So that network is very valuable. Also, YouTube University, you know, like that is exactly why we have the internet for. Google everything, search everything, watch, listen to podcasts, follow entrepreneurs on all social media networks. Like, there is so much untapped information out there that you can get into. So now I want to get into the generational part of your business. Okay, so what steps are you taking to make sure that your business continues down as a legacy for future generations of your family?
Well, I mean, aside from the fact that I am just trying to create a company where I can provide jobs for like the younger people in my family coming up, right? Like for my daughter, for my, you know, our nephews and things like that, like being able to provide internships to these people. It's like, it's just, even as I say it out loud, I'm like, what? Because that's just crazy, right? But being able to do that, I think, is a huge piece of it. I also think the sharing of knowledge is wealth. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I think the more I share and the more I'm able to provide for other people, I think that alone is going to create a legacy, right? For me, for the business, where it's like, here's a resource you can go to, especially as I grow in this business. Like, here's a resource you can go to that can help you build your brand, that can help you build your food brand, your CPG brand, to be a better entrepreneur. So, you know, it's not this figurative wealth, you know what I mean? It's like this idea of it, but I think these are things that can really help. And then, like Stanley talked about, like just being involved in the community, like somehow having this community give back. So we've taught jam classes to underprivileged like schools and kids. We've taught things at culinary high schools. We partnered with CCAP, which is a Marcus Samuelson endeavor, which is like a culinary high school. Just being able to provide kids, Black kids, kids that don't come from wealth, with the knowledge of like, hey, you can be an entrepreneur. You can do more than what you think you can probably do. Especially like I love going in and letting them see what like a Black woman in business looks like, because I feel like a lot of them, you know, like if you look on the Food Network, right, like you're in culinary school and you watch the Food Network and you see all these like white chefs and you're like, great, but that doesn't look like me. Or they like invite their families over and you can tell they like have some kind of wealth like in their home, you know, like, you know, you look at like other races and you're like, you guys clearly have more money than we had growing up. Like I feel like that's something that you cannot relate to, and it can be discouraging. And so like I love going in these classes and they like see like this like young Black woman, and they're just like, oh, like you own a business? What? Like how do you do that? It's like, oh, they have no idea. So just like showing my face and talking about business and talking about like culinary school doesn't mean you have to work in the kitchen forever, right? I worked in the kitchen for like 10 plus years. It was very exhausting for me physically and mentally. So showing them like, hey, just because you have a culinary degree, it doesn't mean you have to just work in the kitchen. Like there's so much more you can do. I think that's kind of what helped me. So just trying to like pass on this knowledge and things like that will really help.
I mean, from my end, I think exposure is everything. And, you know, my parents were immigrants. They worked hard to, you know, give me the basic life. And, you know, luckily I've been able to do, you know, well for myself and my family. And one of the things I always think about is what am I, like one of the reasons honestly I stay in New York is access. Like my kids have access to everything in terms of culture, business, you know, you name it, they see it. And those things become normalized for them. You know, it's rare that they're blown away by something because, you know, it's normal to go to museums. It's normal to, you know, engage with, you know, creative people and so on and so forth. But what I really love about what African Chop House has done for me and my family is I have two daughters. And the first time I did African Chop House, you know, I think my wife was traveling on business, and they, you know, they were with me when, you know, I was setting up for the event, you know, getting the food ready, so on and so forth. So they literally saw the first event and how it was sort of, you know, done, you know, on a small scale. But then they also got to travel with me to South Africa. And I think it gave them an understanding of what happens when you dedicate, you know, your time and your energy to something you believe in. Like it literally went from an event that we did in our home to, you know, me getting an LLC and having a conversation with my daughters around trademarking, copyrights, you know, the importance of an LLC, to, hey guys, we're all getting on a plane to do this event in Johannesburg, which they had never been to before, and then doing the same thing in Ghana. And I think like those are things that, you know, at the time children don't necessarily connect with or think about from a deep perspective. Because I didn't either when I always think about music. My dad played, you know, a lot of different music to me that I didn't like when I was a kid, but, you know, I love it now. So I'm hoping that same impact happens to my daughters where, you know, at some point in their life, they think back to their father creating a business from nothing and how the success of that business helped them travel, helped them, you know, gain exposure to all sorts of people. But they literally saw all the steps. So if you ask any of my daughters, how do you create a business? They know the importance of a logo. They know the importance of trademarks and, you know, creating product and figuring out who their consumer is and all that stuff. So I think that's part of the legacy. Now, whether they decide to do it in the form of a restaurant or something else, I feel like I've at least given them the tools to know how to go about creating their own brand.
I think that's amazing that y'all are really providing the tools to your children, your nieces, and your nephews, and passing that down. But now I'm curious about what was passed down to you. What kind of financial knowledge did the generations before you pass down to you in order for you to be in a place to now be doing this?
I think for me, like one of the biggest things my mom always taught me was literally just to save money. And it sounds so simple, but I remember being in college and I must have saved up like 10 grand in like 2 years or something. Cause my mom like paid my rent, I was like in college and I had a job, but like, what is there? There's like no bills. And I was just so proud of that. Like, I mean, I have nothing to show for that now. Right. But like, I'm saying like then, because all I did was save. Right. Like, and I still had a good time. I still like shopped and did the things like kids and college kids do and stuff. But I literally put away more than I spent. And I think it was just a very simple thing that she taught me at a young age that I kind of like put into practice still to this day. And then also she taught me a little bit about stocks and kind of the importance of investing some of your money. I think it's something that can seem very daunting to people, but she told me that she worked some job and like she would like listen to what she would hear the white people like talking about, and she heard them saying like, yo, like, oh yeah, you got to get these stocks, like it's the thing, like you got to invest in this company. And she was like, oh right, like that's what I'm doing as well. And so she did it, and then like years later the company sold, and I don't know, she got like a $200,000 payout or something from the company just from them selling. And like ever since then it's just been like, she's taught me about having equity in a business and things like that. So I think between the investments and the saving money, those are two simple things you can teach your kids, right? Like save more than you spend, and invest your money so that it can grow and work for you. Really important.
And is that something that you're passing down to your nieces and nephews also?
Amen. Do you hear me? I pass every bit of knowledge I know about anything and everything, not just to my family, but to everybody I know. Like if you reach out to me, if you DM me and you ask me about something, like I may be busy, but when I get to it, I'm going to get to it. I'm gonna send you an email with like all this information, everything I know. And I put on social today, like I put women and Black owned businesses, let's make a pact to share everything we know. Because I just feel like if you just sometimes I put the most basic tip or like entrepreneur tip of the day or something, and I'll get like 4 people that are like, sis, you saved me, or like, just really people like saying thank you so much. And I'm like, that small tip, I have so much more than. And so like my point is I just think we all have to share all this information, like something you may have learned and been passed down to you, like I may have never heard of. So like the more you share it, the more like we're all gonna grow together. Like we all gotta grow together as a culture. Like it's not gonna do any good if I grow and I get rich. Like, we have to grow so that like Black people can be like white people are with like spreading this like wealth. I mean, that is what generational wealth is. So
yeah, it's important that we embrace the culture of collectivism. And you heard Ashley, she said to DM her about equity, about stocks, and about entrepreneur tips. Okay,
do it.
What generational information about finances were passed down to you?
To be frank with you, not a lot. I think saving was sort of the key thing that my parents talked about, was just making sure you save, really think twice before you make frivolous purchases and things of that nature, because you're going to need money. I mean, all very simple advice, but all very valuable advice. I think hard work was also something that was passed down to me, and I definitely am thankful I was exposed to how hard my parents worked, because it gave me some level of understanding of the value of money and how hard it is to make a dollar. And I think for me, what I definitely relate to is the idea of mentorship, and sharing, because like I said before, I think the more people in our community are exposed to different things, the more they'll have the ability to adjust and sort of move forward with that information. A lot of times we don't even know. We don't know these different things exist. Me growing up, I had no idea how to get a job in marketing or get a job at Nike or whatever the case may be. So that was a journey I had to sort of take on my own. And what I really try to do with, the youth around me is give them the tools. This is how I did it. These are the things you should be thinking about.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And I, as an immigrant myself, I totally relate to the only really financial advice I got was to save money. But that brings me to my next question, which is the generational societal pressures we face from family when we decide that we're going to start a business. So, what were those pressures, if any, did you experience from your community or from your family, from the generations before you, when you decided I am going to go out on a limb and invest in myself and start a business?
Um, my mom has supported me from day one of doing this. And her opinion is the only opinion that really matters to me. So, I don't pay attention to much else. Like, and not to get like too like spiritual, but I just feel like you gotta pray on it. When you like find your purpose and you're walking in your purpose, like it's gonna feel right. You're gonna know it's right. So like and it was not like this one moment, but like over time, as I realized that this is what was for me, I don't have time for the other stuff. And another reason why I feel like I'm walking in my purpose is because I actually have not gotten a lot of like negative feedback from people. I've not, I get so many like just people saying things, and it's always so positive. And so I just feel like this is what is meant for me. So I mean, that probably all sounds just ridiculous because people are probably like, oh, all my family like told me don't do it. I mean, my mom supported it, my family supported it. They're just like, they know I was a smart girl. They know I'm not gonna like live out on the streets. Like I'm gonna figure it out. If the business doesn't work, I was like, I'll go back to work, like point blank. So I think there's always been something there that was like, I'm just gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget that like there's still a job market. Like the job market's not going anywhere.
Right.
So,
No, do you know how huge that is? Because so many people are like, what do I do if, and like my mom was like, honey, go back to work if it doesn't work. And I was like, oh yeah, I have a college degree. Right. So like but when people realize that, it's easier to make that leap of faith and like quit your job, because like give yourself the timeline. Like I said, I had a year. It might be 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Like give yourself a timeline. If it doesn't work out, then like go back to work or pivot. Maybe not go back to work, but pivot and try something different. But I feel like I was supported in this decision. And it's funny though, we do talk about like my family doesn't really get it sometimes. So like, my mom was stuck here for COVID with us for months and months. And like, she would make these like little side comments that she like didn't know she was making. But me and my husband would like laugh about them later. But like, she would just like, she would be on the phone with my family, right? And she would be like, they'd be like, what'd you guys do today? And she'd be like, oh, well, me and Don worked and Ashley, and I'll be in the back. I'm like, I worked. Like, just because it looks different than your work doesn't mean I didn't work, right? Like they don't, like I'm not on conference calls all day or like Zoom meetings all day. Like I'm over here building a brand in a different way. I may be on Instagram all day, but like off of Instagram, I made like 45 sales today. Like, what do you mean? Amen. Respect my business. she's like, oh, she's always making these little comments where it's just like, well, what do you have planned today, honey? Like, well, what are you gonna do today? But regardless, like she supports the hell out of it. So
I agree. You have to be afraid to not pivot. I promise y'all, like I quit my job for 2 months just to try out being a full-time entrepreneur. And then I was like, never mind. I think I prefer to work and be an entrepreneur. And I was able to do that because I don't care about what anybody else's opinions on what the decisions I have to make for my life are, because you can always pivot. How about you, Stanley?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up an only child, so I kind of just did what I wanted to do, and I never really gave I just never really got involved in the whole I need people's permission to do stuff. I mean, I eloped, you know what I mean? So like, I'm not necessarily a person that's waiting around for other people.
Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. But it is what it is. Fight me. So like I've never had to ask my mom for money. I've never asked my dad for money. So as long as I'm not starving and and their grandkids are good, they trust that I'll figure it out.
You'll notice that there is a theme of a certain type of tenacity and to be frank, I don't give a fuckness to make the moves that you make when it comes to your business. We are getting ready to sign off, but I just want to make sure, Ashley and Stanley, do you have any last words or a takeaway for us when it comes to being an entrepreneur and running your business? If there was one last thing you could say for us to keep on our minds as we walk away from this session.
Stanley.
I mean, I'll jump in. I think two things, one be build your brand, like really just, minimal, marketing knowledge, but, build your brand so that people know what to expect from you. And those that share the same values will always want to connect with you, and then know who your consumers are. I think like if you can figure those two things out, everything else kind of, falls in line. But those are the key things for me.
I'll tack on to that. I would probably just say, literally fake it till you make it. I think there's so many opportunities I got where people just were like, oh my God, your website's amazing. And they had no idea that like, I was still trying to figure out on the back end how I was going to get the product from A to B. And so just like, to his point, like making your brand stand out, building this brand, right? Like getting your content to look nice, making your website look nice. Just having that front facing, right? Like look really good, your customer service be really good. Nobody has to know on the back end, you're still working on building your empire. If you make the front end look good, the rest will follow suit. So yeah, fake it till you make it.
I 100% agree with that. I am a fake it till you make it type of person. Do not be afraid to make mistakes and put yourself out there. Thank you so much, Ashley and Stanley, for contributing such great words of wisdom to us, for answering all of these questions. I am sure if there's somebody in the audience who was thinking about starting a business, they're definitely leaving here wanting to start one. Is there any contact information you'd like us to drop in the chat for people to get in contact with you also?
Yeah, you can just, Instagram's the best way. You can DM, you can find our email there. It's at Trade ST Jam Co. It's Trade Street Jam Co. Yeah, you can find us there.
Okay, and then I'm gonna pass it over to Lakimja.
Oh, wait. That's not right. That's not right in the chat.
You said that's not right.
Oh, there's the link. There's the link. Okay,
Okay,
it's Trade ST Jam Co. I didn't want anybody to see that Instagram. That's not right. The link. Follow the link.
This panel was so dynamic, and thank you both so much for dropping your gems, sharing your knowledge. And the conversation was truly like very true to our topic, and we shared how everybody can eat and how everybody eats.